Eleanor Bennet stood on the balcony of their penthouse, a gentle breeze brushing through her auburn hair as she rested one hand on her rounded belly. 7 months pregnant and glowing with anticipation, she looked every bit the portrait of happiness. Below her, the city pulsed with life, taxis honking, people rushing, the chaos muted by the height of their luxurious high-rise. Inside, classical music played softly, and the faint aroma of fresh lilies from the crystal vase on the dining table filled the air. Eleanor had everything she had ever dreamed of, a loving husband, a child on the way, and a life most women could only imagine. Her husband, Alexander Bennet, was a name that echoed across headlines, CEO of Bennet International, heir to a hotel empire, and philanthropist. He was handsome, powerful, and respected. The world saw them as the perfect couple, often pictured together at red carpet galas, charity events, and glossy magazine spreads. Eleanor never cared much for the cameras, but Alexander made her feel adored, protected, chosen. Yet behind the shimmering glass walls and lavish penthouse suites, something stirred, something dark and dangerous. There was a presence, subtle at first, like a shadow just out of reach. A woman who watched from a distance. A woman who wanted more than envy or admiration. She wanted Eleanor's life, her husband, her baby, her place. And while Eleanor slept peacefully beside the man she loved, this woman was already plotting her way in. For Eleanor, life had always seemed simple and safe, but perfection has a price, and sometimes, someone else is willing to destroy everything just to steal your happiness. In that moment, as she whispered to her unborn child and smiled at the city lights, Eleanor had no idea her perfect life was about to shatter. Scarlet Hayes knew how to disappear into a room without a sound. She had mastered the art of being present yet invisible during her 2 years as Alexander Bennet's executive assistant. Her sharp eyes absorbed everything, every detail of his schedule, every mood shift in his voice, every glance he gave his wife. That job may have ended 6 months ago, but her obsession had only grown stronger. Scarlet wasn't the kind of woman who faded quietly into the background. She had clawed her way out of poverty, wearing ambition like armor and charm like a weapon. From the moment she first walked into Alexander's office, she knew she wanted more than a paycheck, she wanted him. And when he finally gave in a moment of weakness after a fight with Eleanor, Scarlet convinced herself it was the beginning of everything she deserved. But it didn't last. Alexander ended the affair shortly after, overcome with guilt and desperate to repair his marriage. To Scarlet, that wasn't rejection, it was betrayal. Scarlet believed Eleanor was soft, naive, and far too gentle for the life she'd been given. She watched from afar as Eleanor floated through her days like a fragile porcelain doll, adored by the press and the public. Scarlet didn't see love in Alexander's eyes anymore, only duty. She told herself he was staying with Eleanor because of the baby. Scarlet, in her delusion, believed she was his real future. Her obsession twisted into something darker. She began following Eleanor's social media, tracking her appointments, noting her cravings, her habits. She knew where Eleanor shopped, who she trusted, even the name of the chef who sometimes delivered home-cooked meals to the penthouse. Scarlet had once stood beside Alexander in meetings and now, she stood in shadows, plotting silently with a venomous focus. Her heart hardened every time she saw another glowing photo of Eleanor and Alexander together. The smiles felt like daggers. She deserved that life, no, she was destined for it. And if fate wouldn't give it to her willingly, she would take it piece by piece. The baby was the last tether holding Alexander to Eleanor. If Eleanor disappeared, or fell ill, everything would fall into place. Scarlet's plan wasn't rash, it was carefully crafted, calculated, and cold. All she needed was access, and once she got close enough, she'd make her move. Eleanor wasn't the kind of woman to jump to conclusions. She believed in honesty, in trust, the very foundation on which she had built her marriage. But lately, something about Alexander had changed, and no amount of reasoning could make the unease go away. It began subtly at first. He started coming home later than usual, his excuses paper-thin. Meetings ran long. Traffic delays. A last-minute conference call. Eleanor, ever patient, chalked it up to his workload. After all, running an international hotel empire wasn't a 9-to-5 job. But as the days turned into weeks, his distance grew impossible to ignore. He no longer kissed her on the forehead before heading out, and when she asked about his day, he offered vague, clipped answers. His smile no longer reached his eyes. One night, as she lay in bed waiting for him, her fingers resting gently on her belly, she caught the scent before he even stepped into the room. It wasn't hers, it was musky, floral, unfamiliar. Perfume. Expensive. Not something you picked up from a hotel lobby or a business meeting. She said nothing, but her heart ached quietly. Then came the whispered phone calls. Eleanor overheard him once, behind the closed door of his study. His voice was low, urgent. "This isn't the time," he said. "I told you, not now." When she gently knocked a moment later, he opened the door too quickly, forcing a smile that didn't hide the panic in his eyes. "Just business," he explained. "A supplier issue in Dubai." She nodded, choosing silence again, though her chest felt like it was caving in. It wasn't just the words or the perfume or the silence, it was the energy between them, brittle and strained. The way he would look at her and then quickly look away. The way he placed a protective hand on her belly but didn't linger like he used to. He brought her flowers one evening, her favorite peonies, and for a moment she felt the warmth return. But it was fleeting, like a spotlight that flickers before the bulb dies out. Alexander, for all his charm and strength, looked like a man battling something inside, a war between guilt and desire, shame and obligation. He still ensured her vitamins were refilled, still scheduled her prenatal checkups. He still played the role of caring husband, but the spark that once connected them felt smothered beneath layers of secrets. Eleanor started to watch him more closely, piecing together the inconsistencies, the cracks in their perfect world. She didn't want to believe what her instincts whispered. She held on to hope like a lifeline, convinced that if she could just reach him, if she could remind him of their love, of the life growing inside her, he would come back fully. But something, or someone, was pulling him away. And though she didn't yet know who, or why, Eleanor could feel the ground beneath her marriage shifting. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. And the walls of their picture-perfect life were beginning to fracture. Scarlett had always known how to reinvent herself. Under the name Charlotte Hale, she arrived at the Bennett residence with polished references, a warm smile, and a culinary portfolio that dazzled Eleanor's assistant. It wasn't hard to convince them Eleanor's pregnancy made her too tired to cook most days, and Alexander was frequently away. The idea of having a personal chef a few nights a week sounded like a blessing. Scarlett, masked behind a new hairstyle, colored contacts, and a carefully crafted accent, moved through the apartment like a professional. She wore soft beige aprons and kept her tone gentle, deferential. Eleanor never suspected a thing. Why would she? Scarlett had done her homework. She knew Eleanor's preferences, her allergies, her favorite dishes. Every step she took inside that home was calculated, each moment closer to her goal. That Thursday evening was meant to be the turning point. Eleanor had spent most of the day napping, her feet swollen, her back sore. Scarlett greeted her with a smile and suggested something comforting: lemon herb roasted chicken, sautéed green beans, and mashed potatoes with a hint of garlic. Eleanor, too exhausted to think, agreed and returned to the couch to rest. Scarlett worked quietly in the kitchen, her movements fluid and practiced. But beneath the calm exterior, her hands trembled with anticipation. In her pocket was a vial of powdered toxin, a slow-acting substance she had acquired through a dark contact. Undetectable in small amounts, it would cause nausea, then fatigue, then increasing weakness over days. It would look like a pregnancy complication. By the time Eleanor collapsed, Scarlett would be long gone. She carefully plated the dishes, making sure to sprinkle the poison only on the center portion of Eleanor's chicken breast. Everything was perfect. But fate, so often her enemy, made an unexpected move. The door opened. Alexander walked in, briefcase in hand, clearly exhausted but present, a rare occurrence lately. Scarlett froze for a second but quickly recomposed herself, offering him a polite nod. "Mr. Bennet," she said smoothly. "You're just in time. Dinner's ready." He looked at her, slightly puzzled, perhaps sensing something familiar in her face, but shook it off. "Thanks," he muttered, loosening his tie. Eleanor perked up from the couch, surprised and happy to see him. "You're early," she said. "You missed this baby kicking all afternoon." He smiled faintly and came over to kiss her forehead. "Figured I'd make it home for once." Scarlett, now panicked beneath her calm, tried to steer the situation. "There's an extra portion in the kitchen," she said quickly. "Let me bring it." But Alexander, already seated, reached for one of the plates. And without hesitation, he began to eat. Scarlett's heart pounded. She watched as he chewed the poisoned chicken, her hands clenched behind her back. Eleanor chatted beside him, completely unaware. Scarlett tried to intervene, offering to bring him something different, insisting she had a better cut in the kitchen, but he waved her off. "This is good," he said. "Thanks." And then it happened. Alexander's fork dropped. His hand trembled. He blinked rapidly, then clutched at his chest, swaying slightly in his chair. "Alex?" Eleanor stood up, alarmed. "Alexander, what's wrong?" He gasped, eyes wide, sweat pouring from his brow. Then, without warning, he collapsed sideways onto the floor, unconscious. Eleanor screamed, falling to her knees beside him. Scarlett stood frozen in place, her mind racing. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had poisoned the wrong plate. The ambulance tore through the city with blaring sirens, slicing the silence of the night as Eleanor clutched Alexander's limp hand, her own shaking uncontrollably. His eyes had rolled back. His lips were pale. She kept whispering his name, over and over again, as if her voice could keep him tethered to life. At the hospital, everything blurred, white coats moving fast, monitors beeping, nurses shouting codes, stretchers wheeling past. Eleanor stood helplessly outside the emergency room doors, her hands cradling her belly as fear gripped her chest tighter than any labor pain ever could. The man she loved was fighting for his life, and she had no idea why. What had happened? One moment they were sharing dinner. The next, he was on the floor, breathless, collapsing in front of her. The hours dragged as doctors worked on him, running blood panels, checking vitals, flushing toxins from his system. It wasn't until a stern-faced physician approached her, clipboard in hand, that reality began to shatter. "There was something in his system," he said. "A foreign compound, definitely not food-related. We've already sent it to the lab. But based on initial signs, this wasn't an accident. This was deliberate." Eleanor's heart dropped. She stared at him, disoriented. "What do you mean, deliberate?" The doctor didn't flinch. "We believe your husband was poisoned." Within minutes, hospital security alerted the authorities. A pair of detectives arrived to question Eleanor, treating her as both witness and possible suspect. Still in a haze, she tried to recall everything, what they ate, who had prepared the meal. And then it struck her, Charlotte, the soft-spoken personal chef she'd hired only weeks earlier. She had been in the kitchen all evening. Eleanor told the detectives everything she knew. One of them accompanied her back to the penthouse, where they pulled up security footage from the kitchen. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Charlotte moved fluidly, prepping vegetables, seasoning chicken. But then they saw it, an almost imperceptible motion. She reached into her apron, pulled something small from her pocket, and sprinkled it onto the center of one dish. The timestamp confirmed it. She had tampered with the food. Eleanor recoiled from the screen, horror spreading across her face. "That's not Charlotte," she whispered. "That's Scarlett. Scarlett Hayes." Her blood ran cold. She hadn't seen the woman since the affair, since the tabloids speculated about Alexander's rumored infidelity and quickly buried the story. She never imagined Scarlett would return. Never like this. By the time police issued a warrant and returned to the address on Scarlett's application, she was gone. Her apartment was cleared out. No signs of struggle, no notes. Just silence. Scarlett had vanished. The news broke within hours. Billionaire Alexander Bennett poisoned in possible murder plot. Pregnant wife questioned after husband's collapse. Former mistress disappears after shocking incident. Paparazzi swarmed the hospital. Reporters camped outside the Bennett building. Eleanor's face was splashed across every headline, some sympathetic, some accusing. She could barely breathe beneath the weight of the whispers, the flashing cameras, the betrayal that had nearly claimed her husband's life. She hadn't just let a murderer into her home, she had fed her, trusted her, thanked her. As Alexander remained in critical condition, hooked to machines and clinging to life, Eleanor sat in the hospital hallway in stunned silence. Her world had imploded. The cracks were no longer hidden. The glass had shattered. And somewhere out there, Scarlett was watching it all burn. Scarlett drove through the night, her hands white-knuckled around the steering wheel as the city lights disappeared behind her and the winding roads of the countryside stretched ahead. Rain lashed the windshield, but she didn't slow down. She had already ditched the car's GPS and removed the plates. Her bags, stuffed with cash, fake IDs, and burner phones, were tossed in the back seat, along with a single framed photo of Alexander Bennett. She had printed it from an online article the year she first met him. In it, he was laughing at a charity event, looking impossibly handsome in a tailored black tuxedo. It was the smile that started it all. The way he lit up a room. The way he once looked at her, not with desire, but with genuine kindness. A glance that meant everything to a woman who had nothing. Back when Scarlett first became his assistant, she was fresh out of school, drowning in student loans, and living in a moldy basement apartment where she could hear the rats scratching in the walls at night. The job at Bennett International had felt like a miracle. She wasn't the most experienced, but she was determined, presentable, and above all, pliable. Alexander had noticed her the first week, thanking her personally for the extra effort she put into organizing his chaotic calendar. One afternoon, he'd found her crying in the file room, trying to hide her breakdown after a landlord threatened eviction. Instead of ignoring her, he asked if she was okay, handed her a silk handkerchief, and even joked gently to lighten the mood. That moment changed everything for Scarlett. No man had ever seen her, really seen her. And while he walked away thinking it was a small act of kindness, Scarlett clung to it like it was a vow. Over time, her feelings grew. She learned his routines, memorized the things that made him laugh, tracked the tension in his voice when he spoke to Eleanor. She convinced herself their affair wasn't a mistake but a beginning. But when Alexander ended it, when he told her it was wrong, that he loved his wife and that it could never happen again, something snapped inside her. She didn't see rejection. She saw betrayal. She had sacrificed everything for him, her dignity, her reputation, her soul. And now, after the poisoning failed, after he nearly died instead of Eleanor, all she could feel was rage. He was supposed to see that Eleanor was weak, unworthy, disposable. But instead, he was lying in a hospital bed, and Scarlett was alone, hunted. She reached the remote cottage she had rented under a fake name. It was nestled at the edge of a wooded forest, miles from the nearest town. She would hide there for now. Wait. Plan. Scarlett lit a candle and sat in front of the cracked mirror, brushing her damp hair and whispering to herself. "He'll come," she said softly. "He'll forgive me. He has to." But beneath her breath was something colder. Something unstable. Scarlett wasn't just obsessed anymore, she was unraveling. And the longer she stayed hidden, the more dangerous she became. Eleanor sat by Alexander's bedside, her hand resting on his, cold, unmoving, tethered to 4 lines and machines that hummed quietly around them. The doctors said he was stable, but unconscious. Every hour that passed in that sterile hospital room fed the fire in her chest. She had been naive. She had let someone walk right into her home, smile on her face, and nearly destroy her family. But she wasn't the same woman who once doubted her instincts. Now, she saw everything clearly. Scarlett hadn't just tried to poison her, she had aimed to rip her entire life apart. Eleanor wasn't just fighting for Alexander anymore. She was fighting for the child inside her. The baby that Scarlett had never seen, never touched, never loved, but had still tried to kill. 2 days after the footage confirmed Scarlett's identity, Eleanor took action. She contacted someone she never thought she'd need, Noah Blake, a former detective turned private investigator with a reputation for chasing down corporate fraud, missing persons, and the occasional ghost from someone's past. Noah had rough edges, a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, and a no-nonsense tone that immediately made Eleanor feel both uneasy and protected. He didn't ask her to repeat what happened, he already knew. He'd read the headlines, watched the press conference. And when he looked at her, he didn't see a helpless victim. He saw a woman who was ready to fight. They met in her kitchen, now silent and scrubbed clean, the memory of poison still lingering in the air. Noah spread out a file with details on Scarlett Hayes, her known addresses, previous employment, financial records. He tapped the screen of his laptop, showing transactions that led to a remote cabin rental under an alias. "She's smart," he said. "But she made mistakes. And I don't care how well she hides, everyone leaves a trail." Eleanor nodded, her jaw tight. "Then we follow it." For the first time in weeks, she felt the weight of fear shift to something else, purpose. She wouldn't wait around for another tragedy. Scarlett was out there, and she wasn't going to stop. But neither was Eleanor. Not now. Not ever. The beeping of the heart monitor was steady when Alexander's eyelids fluttered open. The harsh fluorescent light above him blurred into focus, and for a moment, he couldn't remember where he was, or why his entire body ached. His mouth was dry, his limbs heavy, and confusion settled like fog in his brain. Then came the images, flashes of that night at home, the taste of dinner, the tightening in his chest, the way the world tilted sideways. And Scarlett. Her face. Her voice. The moment of betrayal etched into the edges of his memory. Panic flickered across his features. He tried to sit up, groaned, then sank back against the pillows as monitors chirped. A nurse rushed in, alerting the team. Moments later, Eleanor entered the room. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed red, her face pale. But when she saw him awake, the relief that washed over her cracked something inside both of them. She rushed to his side, pressing her hand against his cheek, tears slipping freely now. "You're okay," she whispered. "You came back." Alexander's own eyes brimmed as he took her in. "I'm so sorry." His voice was hoarse, weak, but each word trembled with the weight of guilt. It was Scarlett. "The food, he broke off, swallowing hard. "I should have told you everything months ago. I thought it was over. I ended it. I told her to stop, to stay away. I never meant for it to go this far." Eleanor's lips parted, but no words came. She let him speak, her heart twisting with each truth he finally gave her. "I was weak," Alexander said, voice cracking. "And it nearly killed me. But worse. I put you and the baby in danger. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for it anyway." And then he cried. Eleanor stood at the foot of Alexander's hospital bed, arms folded tightly across her chest as he looked up at her, pleading. His voice was raw, his body fragile, but her heart had built new walls in the days he'd been unconscious. She had replayed everything over and over, the affair, the lies, the poisoned dinner meant for her and their unborn child. The fact that Scarlett had gotten that close wasn't just a betrayal. It was a wound that bled into every part of her soul. "I don't want your apologies," she said calmly, her voice steady in a way that frightened even her. "I want your help." Alexander blinked at her, confused. She continued. "Help me find Scarlett. Help me stop her. Or you will never see me or this baby again." The weight of her words settled heavily in the room. Alexander opened his mouth to speak, but Eleanor had already turned away, her decision made. There was no room for half-truths anymore. No more illusions of perfect love. She loved him, yes, and part of her always would, but that love had to take a back seat to something bigger now, survival. Protection. Justice. Later that day, she packed a small bag and left the penthouse. Not in tears. Not in chaos. But with precision. Noah arranged for a private residence, secure, remote, untraceable. A small team of trained security guards rotated shifts, staying close at all times. Eleanor didn't protest. She had once feared shadows in her own home. Now she welcomed the protection. It gave her room to breathe, to think. For the first time in her life, she saw herself not as someone's wife, not as someone's soon-to-be mother, but as someone who could lead. Who could fight? Scarlett had tried to take everything from her, but in doing so, she had awakened a version of Eleanor that no one, not even Eleanor herself, had known existed. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was hunting. Eleanor spent hours crafting the perfect digital trap. She knew Scarlett was watching, from somewhere out there, lurking in the shadows of their fractured lives. To catch a cunning predator like her, Eleanor had to think like one. With Noah's help, they created a fake social media profile, an alluring persona designed to mimic a woman from Alexander's past, someone Scarlett would recognize and trust. The account posted subtle hints, nostalgic photos of Alexander, cryptic messages about unfinished business, and carefully planted stories that suggested Alexander still harbored feelings for Scarlett. It was bait, delicate and irresistible to someone desperate for a second chance. Days passed with no response, and Eleanor almost feared Scarlett had vanished for good. But then, late one evening, a message popped up on the account, a simple, sharp note, still waiting. It was from Scarlett. Eleanor's heart pounded. The hunt was on. Through encrypted chats, Eleanor and Noah guided Scarlett into believing Alexander wanted to meet in person. They arranged a secluded location, a small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. What Scarlett didn't know was that Eleanor and Noah had set up hidden cameras, microphones, and a team of plainclothes officers nearby, ready to move in at a moment's notice. Scarlett arrived under the cover of dusk, her face a mask of nervous excitement and lingering obsession. She paced the dimly lit space, clutching a small bag, speaking aloud as if to Alexander. "You don't know what I did for you," she whispered fiercely. "I gave up everything. And Eleanor, she's weak, undeserving. I almost had her. I almost took her down. But she's stubborn. I had to try again. That poison, it was supposed to end it all. Her, the baby, everyone. And when he ate it first. That was never the plan." Her voice trembled, a mix of anger and regret. She pulled out a worn journal from her bag and flipped through pages filled with frantic handwriting, notes, confessions, plans. Eleanor watched from the surveillance van, each word fueling her resolve. Scarlett's admission was more than a confession, it was a roadmap to the danger they had narrowly escaped and proof of her guilt beyond any doubt. Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. Police cars converged on the warehouse, headlights cutting through the night. Scarlett froze, realizing the trap too late. She tried to flee but was quickly surrounded and restrained by officers. Tears streamed down her face as she was handcuffed, her world collapsing as swiftly as the plan she had so meticulously woven. Back in the safe house, Eleanor exhaled deeply, the tension finally breaking. The nightmare that had haunted her days and nights was beginning to end. Scarlett Hayes was caught, and justice was within reach. But Eleanor knew this was only the start of a long road toward healing, for herself, her husband, and the innocent life she carried inside. The shadows had lifted for now, but the scars would remain. When Scarlett was finally taken into custody, her fierce facade began to crumble. In the sterile interrogation room, her eyes darted wildly, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Faced with the reality of her capture, panic overtook her. Late one night, under guard in a holding cell, she seized a moment of vulnerability, swallowing a handful of pills she had hidden in her belongings. The jailers found her barely conscious, her breathing shallow, and rushed her to the hospital just in time to save her life. The attempted suicide shocked everyone, but it also revealed the depth of her unraveling mind. Rather than standing trial immediately, Scarlett was evaluated by psychiatric professionals. The diagnosis was clear: she was suffering from severe delusions, obsessive-compulsive behaviors, and a dangerous fixation on Alexander Bennett. Experts concluded that her mental state was unstable, and incarceration without treatment would do more harm than good. Instead, she was transferred to a high-security psychiatric facility designed for patients with violent tendencies and deep psychological trauma. Within the padded walls of the facility, Scarlett's obsession continued to consume her. Staff discovered a hidden diary in her possession, pages upon pages filled with frantic scrawls, erratic sketches, and disturbing ramblings about Alexander and Eleanor. She had chronicled every interaction she had ever witnessed, every whispered conversation she imagined, and every fantasy where she replaced Eleanor in Alexander's life. The diary revealed a tangled web of jealousy and delusion: how she convinced herself that Alexander's kindness was love, how she believed she was the rightful queen of his world, and how Eleanor was merely an obstacle to be removed. The writing was raw, emotional, and deeply unsettling, offering a window into the darkness that had driven her actions. Despite treatment, Scarlett remained fixated, often speaking to imaginary versions of Alexander or ranting about the betrayal she endured. Therapists tried to break through the fog of obsession, but the scars ran deep. She was a woman broken by love twisted into something toxic and destructive. And even behind locked doors, with her freedom stripped away, Scarlett's mind clung to the same dangerous hope that somehow, someday, Alexander would come for her. Months passed, and the once shattered silence in the Bennett household slowly began to fill with new sounds: soft cries, gentle coos, and the fragile rhythm of life renewed. Eleanor gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she named Leo. Holding him in her arms for the first time, she felt a surge of fierce love and protection unlike anything she had known before. Leo was more than just their child; he was a symbol of hope and a new beginning, a reason to move forward despite the shadows that had darkened their lives. Alexander, now out of the hospital and physically recovering, faced a different kind of battle. The poison had taken a toll not just on his body but on his soul. Recognizing that his mistakes and secrets had nearly destroyed his family, he committed himself to therapy, determined to confront his flaws and rebuild the fractured trust between him and Eleanor. He attended sessions regularly, sometimes reluctantly, but always with the understanding that his journey toward redemption would be long and demanding. He knew that apologies alone could never erase the pain, but he hoped that consistent honesty and effort might one day heal the wounds he'd caused. Eleanor, while cautious and guarded, made the conscious decision to allow Alexander to be part of Leo's life. The road to forgiveness wasn't straightforward; her heart still carried scars, and her eyes searched for signs of genuine change. She insisted on boundaries: no rushed reunions, no false promises. Their interactions were polite and civil, rooted in a shared responsibility rather than rekindled passion. They co-parented with maturity, focusing on what their son needed most: love, stability, and presence. Alexander attended doctor's appointments, read bedtime stories, and held Leo gently, careful not to overstep but eager to prove his devotion. Though the distance between Eleanor and Alexander remained, emotional walls neither dared to breach too soon. The presence of their son created a fragile bridge. Each small step forward was a victory in itself, a quiet testament to resilience and the possibility of healing. They both understood that true reconciliation might be far away, but for now, they had each other's cooperation and the shared goal of raising Leo in a world safer and more loving than the one that nearly tore them apart. My dearest Leo, as I write this letter, you're sleeping peacefully beside me, unaware of the storms we've weathered to bring you into this world. Your tiny fingers clutching my hand, your soft breaths rising and falling. It's in these quiet moments that I find the strength to tell you the story of your family, not to frighten you, but to prepare you for the world you will grow into. You see, life isn't always gentle or fair. Sometimes, those we trust most can betray us in the deepest, most painful ways. Your father and I lived through such a betrayal, a shadow that darkened our brightest days and threatened to tear us apart forever. I want you to know about the woman who tried to destroy our family, who hid behind smiles and kindness but carried poison in her heart. She thought she could take everything from us: your home, your father's love, even your very life before you had a chance to breathe this air. But she underestimated the power of a mother's love and the strength that grows when a family fights for its future. Your father nearly died because of her sins, and it changed us all. It tested our trust, our patience, and our will to forgive. But Leo, this letter isn't just about betrayal or pain. It's about resilience. It's about the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. It's about rising from the ashes when life burns you down, and finding light in the darkest places. I want you to grow up knowing that no matter how hard the world may try to knock you down, you have the power to stand tall, to protect those you love, and to heal even when your heart feels shattered. There will be people who come into your life with hidden intentions, who wear masks to deceive. Learn to listen to your instincts. Be kind, but be cautious. Guard your heart like the treasure it is. Let love in, but never blindly. Trust is earned, not given freely, and sometimes the greatest act of courage is knowing when to walk away. Your father and I are still healing. Our journey isn't perfect, and some days are harder than others. But we share one unshakable truth: we want to give you the safest, happiest life possible. We will protect you from the darkness that once threatened us, and we will teach you how to shine despite it. You, Leo, are my reason to live. The light that guides me through every night of fear and uncertainty. You carry hope in your tiny hands, and the promise of new beginnings. As you grow, remember that strength isn't just about power or bravery, it's about love, forgiveness, and the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear. I love you more than words can say, and I will spend every day making sure you know it. Forever yours. Mom.